All right, hi, welcome back. We're talking about real life strategy as the course. We've already talked about the acronyms REALIs, and now we'll get to Z. R was for robust strategy, your robust strategy. E is for the enablers for the change that you're going to ask to implement and the barriers. A is the approach, what approach are you going to use? L is how will you lead the change? And then I is what are the individuals and teams you'll need and how will you excite and motivate them. And then Z is what we call Zeal. What happens is when you try and implement something which takes time, often there's a lot of excitement and enthusiasm at the beginning saying, yes, let's get going, let's do something different. And there may be resistance, but there is a lot of enthusiasm at the beginning because you articulate it well. What people forget is over time, the communication begins to decrease, the motivation which we do to get people excited about things is not as often, and the journey begins to start feeling like it's a long journey, and you're not getting the results immediately. So how do you get people to feel the zeal, the excitement, the enthusiasm of moving this initiative forward, not at the beginning stages, but at later stages? And what typically happens in this type of environments is, as time goes forward, some mistakes are made, you get more uncertainty, there'll be delays, and then as a result of it, you'll get some low morale and some criticism to the process of what you're trying to implement. And what you want to do is avoid that. And the answer for that is provide quick wins and have lots of good communications. So those are two main outputs of this part of the lecture, is what is a quick win and how do you design it? And how do you make sure it's part of your plan? Not milestones, but quick wins are added into the design of the implementation. And then along with that, what communication messages will you provide on a consistent basis? Quick wins, basically the advantage of them is they build confidence in the process, they do strengthen morale, but it's all drawn to the buy-in of other people. So my goodness, those guys are getting some quick wins. And then silence critiques. So if you look at Hult International Business School as an example, one of the quick wins for going global was Shanghai. Shanghai is not officially a campus for Hult. It's one of the satellite campuses. We do not teach full-time over there. In order to prove that we're going to go global, we said, why don't we just create one module, module A, B, C, and D, where we can offer a training. This happened in about 2007 for the first time. And so people said, oh my goodness, I can see that there's a possibility of going global. The strategy was to go global. There are multiple campuses everywhere. But you couldn't do that immediately, and here was a quick win to communicate we will go global. And that created the logic to say when Dubai opened, we see the strategy executing. And then London opened, and we get that. And then Dubai, then we get in San Francisco. So that's what it does. It builds confidence that we can do that. It also provides a little bit of practice in what we need to do. But the key thing about quick wins is whatever quick win you design, it must be visible. When you get the result, everybody can see it. So Shanghai as a campus was very visible to everybody. People saw it, it was there, people went there, they talked about it. It was also very meaningful. It was meaningful because it wasn't a campus just down the road from Hult in Boston. It was all the way in China. It was in one of the greatest cities in the world, Shanghai. And people had experiences this. It was meaningful. It was also unambiguous. It was a Hult product. It wasn't somebody else's. Somebody else couldn't take credit for it. It was what we did. And as a quick win, if we had tried to do a full campus in Shanghai immediately, that would have been an issue and a challenge. But we didn't do that. We had to make sure it was achievable. Was it within the resources, in the time frame, can you achieve it very easily? When you do that, in those combinations, you get a quick win. And so you're going to keep on asking the question, do we have those specific things in there? And we'll talk about plans specifically on how to execute quick wins inside the class. And it's in the handouts that you'll get. The other part is the communication. You know there are benefits to communication, and those benefits will allow the right people to know what's going on and what the role is going to be. It will also allow people to basically motivate them and move them forward. Now there are many ways to communicate, and the way we like to communicate is first start with the inside team, draw circles, and bigger circles as a sphere of influences, and then ask what messages have to go out to each one of the different stakeholders, and what's the sequence and timing for that. And there's a plan around that. That's essentially what a communication plan is what's the message we send on the inner group, the bigger group, and the group which was outside, and then how frequently are we going to communicate to different levels, and what's the message that we need to send at each time. The content, the frequency, and the stakeholders. And we got examples of some sort of communication plan that people use. But let me show you whatever communication you're doing for implementing any strategy, what we find again and again is you could do it at least 10 times more. Companies repeatedly under-communicate the strategy and the implementation. We would like to think really hard about communicate, whether it's posters on the wall, whether they're email updates, whatever it is, we need to communicate what the strategy of the organization is, especially as the organization starts getting bigger and bigger.